Hello, welcome to Courageous Consciousness. I'm DJ Gallup, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about something that I think we all do, at least from time to time, and maybe some of us do it regularly or even daily. And that is, we have come to this place where we tell ourselves negative stories or negative narratives about our lives. And maybe not about everything in our lives, but maybe we tell ourselves negative stories about money or about career or our love life or our home life. And we just get in this pattern of telling ourselves these negative stories that may or may not actually even be true. And so I meditated on this subject for a while, and I kind of came to the conclusion that these stories fall in one of two broad categories, if you will. So there's category one over here, and that is people who tell themselves these stories sometimes are people who fall into the victim mentality game a lot. And I think we all probably know people like that. I know I have at least 5 or 6 people in my life who use that victim card a lot. They tend to play the victim role a lot. And my feeling is that this tends to come from their childhood or from learned behavior over the years. And so they tell themselves these stories, these negative stories, and they just do it all the time. And they turn themselves into the victim, even if they actually weren't a victim whatsoever, okay? And then the other side of the equation, I think the other reason sometimes we tell ourselves these stories is because we are suffering from either a lack of self-love, a lack of self-confidence, or we are spending too much of our energy comparing ourselves to other people. And if you do that, if you find that you are comparing elements of your life to other people who are doing better than you in your life, oftentimes this will lead to this kind of lack of self-love, this lack of self-confidence, and to you telling yourself these negative stories about yourself, kind of putting yourself down, if you will. So I wanted to explore these a little bit more and give you guys a couple of examples. So for the first example, which is people who tend to fall into that victim game where they play the victim card. My best friend here in town is a sweet, wonderful, intelligent, caring, helpful, wonderful guy. And he has been married for some years. He's been recently going through a separation, maybe eventually leading to a divorce, but they're definitely separated at the moment. And there are several stories that I've heard him tell over the years, and I'm sure he tells himself over and over and over again as well, because if I've heard the stories, I'm sure he's been telling himself these stories too. But there are some stories about this relationship I've heard so many times where he has been this victim. And it's not to say it was a perfect marriage. It certainly was not a perfect marriage. There was a lot of pain in this marriage. But these stories, to me, I don't think are always accurate. I think that these are just stories that he has learned to tell himself over the years. So I'll give you guys 2 examples of stories that he tells. One has to do with his husband. And his husband, in my friend's mind, his husband had sex with a mutual friend of theirs. And this was someone that my friend did not want his husband to be having sex with, for certain. And he even asked him very, directly, please do not have sex with this person. And in my friend's mind, they did it anyway. They had sex. So, his husband and this other friend of theirs had sex. And the thing is, I've actually spoken with his husband about this topic a few times, and his husband tells me over and over and over again that no, he and this friend never had sex. He never had any interest in this, friend at all. In fact, he's also very good friends with this friend's wife, and he would never want to do anything to hurt her. And when he's talking to me one-on-one, he has no reason to lie to me. So I truly don't believe that my friend's husband and this other friend had sex. I really don't believe it. But it is the story that my friend keeps bringing up time and time and time again. No matter how much you try and counter this story to him, I'll try and explain to him, I don't know if this really happened. It seems like it may not have happened. It, to him, is so real. It is such a fact in his mind that he uses it to play this victim card, And then the other story that this friend tells a lot also has to do with his relationship. I've heard this story countless times now, where he and his husband were out at the grocery store. They had a whole big cart full of groceries. My friend wanted some cucumbers. He picked out 3 cucumbers from the produce section and put them in the cart. And his husband then went back over and put the cucumbers back on the shelf and didn't let him get the cucumbers. And I've heard this story so many times. The narrative that keeps happening is he wouldn't even let me have these cucumbers. I was hungry, I was starving, I wasn't able to have the food I needed, and he wasn't even willing to let me have these cucumbers. And once again, I've talked to his husband about this story a few times, and his husband always says, no, it wasn't a matter of the cucumbers. The cucumbers were cheap. They were 3 for $1. We had a whole cart full of groceries. It had nothing to do with these cucumbers. The issue was he put the cucumbers in the cart and they looked like they were in bad condition and they had spots on them and they were yellowing, and he could figure that maybe they were only going to last a day or 2 in the refrigerator. So he put them back. But even though, once again, I have mentioned this to my friend time and again that, there may have been a very good reason that his husband put these cucumbers back, in his head, it was a very personal thing. It was a personal vendetta against him, where he wasn't able to eat these cucumbers or buy these cucumbers. So you can see how we do that sometimes. We'll tell ourselves these stories that turn us into victims, and they don't have to be about big things. They could be about something as minuscule as a cucumber. But to the person telling the story, it just is this repetitive loop in their mind, and it keeps turning them into a victim over and over and over again, okay? Now, the other example that comes from comparing yourself against people and lack of self-love and a lack of self-confidence, or too much anyway, I wanted to kind of explain my story in this regard. So the story that I have been telling myself for a long time has to do with my husband. So my husband, Rashawn, is an incredible guy. He works abroad with Doctors Without Borders about half the time. He's currently away right now on a 9-month, what they call a mission, and he's working in Democratic Republic of Congo. And so for most of the last 10 years, we've been together for 10 years, I have come to this place where I would put my husband up on this pedestal, if you will, because he's doing such amazing work. It obviously is not something that most people can do. Most people are not willing to go to Africa to work in war-torn areas with very, very sick people where there's a lot of violence. Most people are not willing to do that. So I've kind of, put my husband up on this pedestal for years. And I've told myself that, he's more evolved than I am. He's more giving. He's more hardworking. He's more generous. He's more selfless than I am. And so I've put myself in this role. I've told myself that what my role is to be the supportive spouse. That is what I'm here to do, is to help my husband, in being supportive in doing his work, because my work is not as important. It doesn't help as many people. My work is just not as big as his work is. And it's only really occurred to me in the last 6 months how terrible this story is. And I've been telling myself this story for such a long time. I've gotten in this habit where I see his work as being so important and my work being so unimportant. And what I finally was able to do by meditating and by really looking deeply into the subject was I started realizing that this story was just a story I was telling myself, and that I could actually transform this story into something way more beneficial for me. So what I've started realizing is, yes, what my husband is doing is awesome, but I was spending way too much of my time comparing my work and my life to him and his life and his work. And that was really, really unhealthy. And it forced me to have a lack of self-love and a lack of self-confidence. So how I started transforming that story was I started really looking deeply into it. And the first thing I started asking myself, and this is what I would encourage you to do as well. So the first thing I would ask myself is this story true? Is this story accurate that I'm telling myself? And what I started to realize was, no, it's not true at all. Yes, the work he is doing is amazing work. It helps a lot of people. It is life-changing work that he is doing. Absolutely. But is it really any better than the work I do? Because in my day-to-day life, I also help a lot of people. I help release pain. I help give people a nice mental outlet where they can come and they can relax with me. And so I've started coming to the conclusion that no, my work is just as important as his work. So I started challenging the first thing about that narrative, which is it true? Is it accurate? And I found that no, the story I was telling myself is not true and not accurate at all. The second question I started asking myself, and once again I would suggest that you ask yourself about these stories, is how is this story or how is this belief serving me? Is it doing me any good, or is it doing me harm? And if it's doing you harm, or if it's not doing you good, then why are you sticking with this story? Okay? Obviously, it is not serving you in a beneficial way. So that leads to question number 3 that I started asking myself, which is, can I release this story? Can I release this story from my body and from my energy field? Because keep in mind, thoughts are energy. I think we all realize this. Thoughts are energy. And I think we keep those stories very, very close to us. Maybe we store them in our body and we get even, perhaps aches and pains from telling ourselves these stories. We might get diseases from telling ourselves these stories. Or it may just be sticking around in our energy field. In any case, it is doing us no good at all to have around us. So can we release that story from our body and from our energy field? And what I would recommend you do is, if you would like to release these negative narratives from your life, consider doing a meditation where you ask either your spirit guides, your angel, your guardian angel, an ascended master, or your higher self, whatever you feel like you connect with. You can ask them to come down and help release this story, release this narrative from your body or from your energy field. And then once you feel that it has gotten released and like you are no longer going down that road of telling yourself that story, I want you to consider replacing that negative narrative with a positive narrative. So what is something that you can tell yourself that is true, that is helpful, that is beneficial for you on whatever path you're on, or on whatever topic that you were telling yourself this story about? So if you are telling yourself negative stories about your love life, just, I'm never going to find a boyfriend, I'm never going to find a girlfriend, I'm never going to get married, no one wants me, dating is hard. I see people, telling themselves these negative stories all the time. So release that story. Just release it. No, release that story. That is not accurate. It is not helpful. It is not helping me to find a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, right? And instead, start to tell yourself a more positive story to replace that negative story. So that positive story could be as simple as, there are lots and lots of interesting, intelligent, wonderful, smart people in my community, and I'm sure at least one of them is interested in getting to know me and is interested in being with me, right? That is a positive story that you can tell yourself. In a way, it's a bit of law of attraction, but it's a positive story you can use to replace those negative narratives that you used to tell about yourself. So I'm really interested to see if these questions or if these tips help you at all, because I have found that it has helped me release a lot of the negative stories that I have told myself over the years. And so, of course, I really appreciate if you leave a comment. If you like the video, of course, you can always do a thumbs up, and I always love subscribers, so I appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. I'm making videos regularly now, so I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of this hump week here.